Okay, let me tell you something that happened to me when I was younger. Something I still think about way too often. It's one of those stories I don't bring up unless I know people won't think I'm making it up. Because it's that weird. Creepy too. Still gives me chills. It was 2006, and I was 18 at the time, working as a delivery driver for this small, old-school pizza joint called Tony's Slice House. It was in the middle of a quiet town called Redwood Hollow. Nothing big. Not the kind of place where you expect anything crazy to happen. Just strip malls, diners, and a gas station with a flickering sign that nobody ever fixed. Tony, the guy who owned the place, was this loud, red-faced dude who always wore a grease-stained apron and yelled at the TV during baseball season. He was nice enough, but definitely the kind of guy who thought yelling was just how people talked. Anyway, it was a Saturday night, one of our busier nights, and I was doing the closing shift. We stayed open late on weekends, usually until midnight. It was around 11:30 when the last order of the night came in. Just one large pepperoni. Nothing special. Tony handed me the slip and said, "Hey, this one's kinda far out. Some lady named Denise." The address was on the edge of town in an area I'd never delivered to before. Not sketchy exactly, just out there. Lots of older homes, not a lot of streetlights. I figured, hey, longer drive probably means a better tip, so I didn't think much of it. I boxed up the pizza, grabbed my keys, and headed out. My car at the time was this ugly beige Saturn that rattled when it hit 50 miles per hour. But it got the job done. I remember putting on one of my burned CDs, Linkin Park or something like that, and zoning out as I drove through town. By the time I turned onto the street, things already felt a little off. There were barely any houses, and the ones that were there looked like they hadn't been touched since the 70s. Paint peeling, porches sagging, yards overgrown. The address was for house number 2418, but the mailbox was missing and the numbers were all worn off. I parked in front of the one I thought was it, a one-story place with cracked windows and a porch light that kept flickering. I was halfway up the driveway when I heard a voice from next door. A woman leaned out of the window of the neighboring house and called, "Hey, the pizza's for us, we gave the wrong address." She waved me over like it was no big deal. I remember hesitating for a second, something about the way she said it. I don't know, just didn't feel right, but I didn't want to make a scene. I figured maybe she just lived with the person who placed the order or whatever. So I walked over to her house. It was even more run-down than the first one. The screen door hung crooked and the doorbell looked like someone had punched it. I knocked. Nothing. Knocked again. After about 30 seconds, I heard a woman yell from inside, "1 second!" Eventually, the door creaked open and this woman in her 40s stood there. She had wild, frizzy hair and way too much makeup smeared around her eyes. She grinned at me in a way that wasn't friendly. It was hungry. That's the only way I can describe it. "Well, aren't you just adorable?" she said, looking me up and down. Then she turned her head and called back into the house. "Jesse, come check out the pizza boy." Another woman, also in her 40s, came to the door. Same vibe, same too-wide smile. They both stared at me like I was the only person on earth. I laughed nervously and said, "One large pepperoni?" "Oh, come in," Denise said. "We've got the money inside. You want a glass of wine? You look like you've had a long night." I was about to say no, but then I remembered how my friends always joked about stuff like this. I knew if I told them later and said I'd left, they'd never let me hear the end of it. So being a dumb teenage guy, I stepped inside. Big mistake. The house smelled like old wood, cigarettes, and something sweet, but not in a good way. Like rotting fruit. The lights were dim, and the only sound was some staticky music playing from a dusty radio in the kitchen. They led me into the living room, where I sat on this sagging brown couch. The cushions were stained, and I think something crunched underneath me. They sat on either side of me, close. Too close. They asked me my age. I lied and said I was 21. They giggled and said, "Doesn't matter." I took a sip of wine they gave me. It tasted like vinegar and cough syrup, but I smiled and nodded like it was fine. They kept touching my arm, brushing my hair back, whispering weird compliments. I laughed awkwardly and tried to steer the conversation toward the pizza. So, who ordered it? But they ignored the question. Then Jesse said, "We want to show you something downstairs." That's when things started to feel wrong. The wine, their weird smiles, the way they kept glancing at each other. Something about it made the hair on my neck stand up. I asked what was down there, and Denise said, "It's a surprise, but you'll love it. They told me to go first." I walked to the basement door and opened it. The stairs creaked and I couldn't see anything past the third step. It was pitch black. No light switch in sight. I looked back at them. That's when I saw their faces change. Their smiles vanished. Their eyes went blank like someone had just turned them off. And they just stared at me. I froze. "What's down there?" I asked again. Jessie's voice was flat. "Go ahead. You'll see." Then she smiled again, but it was different this time. It didn't reach her eyes. I leaned forward, trying to see into the dark, and I swear I'm not making this up. I saw something move. Not just shadows. Something moved. A shape, a hand, maybe even a face. I backed up fast. That's when I noticed the two women had silently stepped closer. They were almost behind me, blocking the way back to the living room. I need the money for the pizza," I said, trying to keep my voice from shaking. I walked around them slowly toward the front door, and then I saw him, a man, huge, standing in the kitchen doorway. He had to be 6.5 feet tall, wide as a refrigerator. His face was hard to see, but his eyes caught the light. Cold. Empty. He said 5 words I'll never forget. "Let's just make this easy." Something in me snapped. I didn't say anything, I just ran. I threw open the front door, bolted outside, and slammed it behind me. As I sprinted to my car, I heard the door open again. I got in, locked the doors, and that's when I saw him. He was already outside my passenger window, just standing there staring in. He tried the handle. It didn't budge. Then he knocked, slow and heavy. I peeled out of that driveway so fast I nearly hit the mailbox. Didn't look back once. Back at Tony's, I was out of breath, shaking. I told him everything. At first, he didn't believe me, but then he saw how pale I was, how much I was sweating. He said, "You did the right thing coming back." We called the non-emergency police line, gave them the address, told them what happened. I never found out what came of it, never saw a report, never heard a word. But sometimes, late at night, I think about what was waiting for me in that basement. And I thank God I never found out. Okay, so this happened back in the fall of 2013. I was 18, still living in the town I grew up in, Oak Ridge, Missouri. It's one of those quiet, kind of boring towns where the weirdest thing that usually happens is a raccoon getting into your trash. At the time, I was delivering pizzas part-time to help pay for gas and random stuff like snacks, school supplies, and the occasional video game. I worked at this small pizza joint called Tony's Takeout. Chill place, mostly regulars, nothing fancy. Most nights were easy. I'd answer the phone, write down the order, pack the food, and drop it off. People were nice enough. Tips were usually a few bucks, sometimes more if it was a big order or someone was feeling generous. Nothing strange ever happened, just the usual day-in, day-out routine, until that one delivery on Red Fern Road. I remember it was a Wednesday evening. Cool breeze, leaves crunching under my shoes, just starting to get dark out. I was almost off the clock when Tony himself handed me a small order, a meatball sub and a garlic knot. Real basic. Not the kind of thing that comes with a big tip, but I didn't mind. One last delivery and I'd be done. I plugged the address into my phone and headed out. Red Fern Road wasn't far, but I'd never been down that specific block before. As I got closer, I realized why. It was tucked away at the edge of town, a little off the main road. The street was narrow and lined with trees that leaned over the pavement, their branches rattling in the wind like bones tapping glass. There were maybe 4 houses total, all spread far apart with big yards and fences that had definitely seen better days. I pulled up to the address. 147 Red Fern Road, and got this weird feeling right away. The house didn't look right. It was small and kind of slanted to one side, like it was slowly sinking into the ground. The paint was peeling, shutters hung crooked, and the porch light wasn't on. Actually, none of the lights were on. The house next door was even worse, totally abandoned and overgrown. Tall weeds swayed like they were whispering secrets to each other. I grabbed the food and stepped out of the car. That's when I noticed the front door of the house I was delivering to. It was cracked open. Not wide, just barely, like someone forgot to close it all the way. I hesitated. Then I heard it. Piano music. It was faint, but definitely coming from inside. Slow, simple notes. The kind of tune you'd hear in an old movie right before something terrible happens. I tried to brush it off. Maybe someone was playing. Maybe it was just a weird coincidence. I knocked on the door. No answer. I rang the doorbell, but nothing happened. No sound. The piano music kept playing though, steady and just a little too eerie. I didn't want to just barge in, so I walked around to the side of the house to see if there was another entrance. The backyard was a total disaster. Broken lawn chairs, a rusted bike missing its front wheel, and a kiddie pool flipped upside down. In the middle of the yard, there was this collapsed section of chain-link fence like something had run straight through it. That part made me pause. I went up to the back door, knocked hard, and called out, "Hello? Pizza delivery." Still nothing. I looked through the glass and saw a cluttered room. Stacks of boxes, clothes piled up on a chair, what looked like a broken lamp on the floor. Everything was covered in dust. It didn't look like anyone had lived there in a long time. I walked back around to the front, pulled out my phone and called Danny, the guy working the counter at Tony's that night. "Hey, can you double-check the address for this order?" He put the phone down, flipped through the receipt book, and came back. "Yep, that's the one. 547 Red Fern Road." I stood there staring at that cracked door. The music was still playing. Same tune, never changing. I don't know what came over me, but I decided to push the door open just a little more and called inside. "Pizza's here." The piano stopped. For a second, there was total silence. Then a voice, scratchy and distant, called out, "Over here." The piano started up again. Something about that moment didn't sit right with me. The voice didn't sound like it was coming from the same direction as the music. It sounded off. Like it wasn't echoing the way it should have in a normal house. Still, I stepped inside. The air hit me immediately. Thick, stale with this strange mix of mildew and something sweet, like rotting fruit. I looked around. The room was barely lit from the dying light outside. The walls were yellowed, the floor creaked under my shoes, and everything looked frozen in time, like no one had touched anything in years. "Hello?" I said again, louder this time. The music kept playing. "I'm right by the door," I called out. The piano stopped again. Then, a beat later, the same voice. "Sorry, I can't walk very well. Could you bring it into the dining room?" I felt a chill crawl up the back of my neck. I didn't know why, but something about the way they said it. It didn't feel real. It felt rehearsed. I asked, "Which room is that?" The voice paused, then said, "Just walk through the living room." There was no background noise, no TV, no footsteps. Just silence, and that silence made my skin crawl. I thought, okay, maybe it's just an old guy with a leg injury or something. I didn't want to be rude, but my gut was screaming at me to leave. I stepped forward past the doorframe and into what used to be a living room. The furniture was covered with white sheets all coated in dust. A picture frame lay face down on the coffee table. I peeked through the archway into the next room. That's when I saw the piano. It was an old upright, scratched and chipped. Keys yellowed with age. No one was sitting at it. No one was in the room at all. I didn't hear footsteps. No shuffling. No sign of anyone. Just that piano. And then I saw something else. Just past the piano, in the hallway leading deeper into the house, a shadow. Not moving. Not shaped like furniture either, just still. My heart started pounding. I backed up one slow step at a time. I didn't call out again. I didn't say a word. I turned and walked straight out the front door, closed it behind me, got in my car, and drove back to the pizzeria without looking back. When I got there, I told Tony everything. The creepy music, the voice, the empty room. He didn't even ask me why I didn't leave the food. He just nodded and said, "Yeah, no. You did the right thing." No one ever called asking where their food was. Later that night, I couldn't shake the feeling, so I looked up the address online. The house had been vacant for over 6 months. It had gone into foreclosure earlier that year. The last tenant was an elderly man who died in the hospital. No relatives. No one ever moved back in. To this day, I don't know who or what was in that house that night. Maybe it was a squatter playing some messed up game, or maybe it was something else entirely. But I know this. I never went near Red Fern Road again, and I don't take pizza orders right before closing anymore. Ever. You ever get that weird feeling something bad's about to happen? Like out of nowhere your stomach just sinks? That's how I felt the night I quit my job delivering for Tony's Pizza and Pasta in a little town called Maple Hollow. This was back in 2011. I was 17, working weekends and after school saving up for my first real car. The place was half pizza joint, half sit-down Italian restaurant. Some days I was wiping tables or sweeping floors. Other days I ran the front register. But when they handed me deliveries, I was happy, because that meant tips. This night started off normal. Kinda quiet, honestly. It was a Saturday night and cold as hell outside. The air had that early winter bite and the streets were half dead. Just me, some scattered streetlights, and the low hum of my dad's beat-up Honda. Right before closing, around 10:15 p.m., we got a big order. 3 large specialty pizzas. Extra toppings, side of garlic knots. It totaled almost $80, so I knew someone was having a serious late-night feast. The address was over on the far edge of town, Greystone Lane. Now, folks around Maple Hollow knew to stay away from that end after dark. Lots of broken streetlights, stray dogs, sketchy folks hanging around. I told Tony, the manager, "This is Greystone. You sure we deliver there?" He just shrugged and said, "They paid up front. Just drop it off and be quick." I remember thinking, whatever. One last delivery, get the tip, and I'm done. So I loaded the boxes in the back seat, pulled my hoodie up, and set out. The drive was about 20 minutes, long, dark, and eerily quiet. No cars, no people. Just that kind of silence that messes with your head. The address was a run-down 2-story house tucked between some overgrown trees. A single porch light flickered like it was trying to die. The windows were shut, but not a curtain in sight. The paint on the siding had peeled away like old sunburn. The air smelled like wet leaves and rust. I pulled into the driveway. No other cars. No sound but the wind. Even the bugs were quiet. I grabbed the pizzas and walked up the steps. I didn't even get to knock. The door creaked open like it had been waiting for me. A man stood there. Mid-30s maybe, dark hoodie, blank expression. His eyes were cold. Just dead. He looked at the pizza boxes, then slowly opened the door wider. That's when I saw it. He was holding a pistol by his side. Casual, like it was nothing. Everything in me went stiff. My breath caught in my throat. Then 2 more guys stepped into view behind him. One stood by the stairs, the other by the kitchen. Both wore dark clothes and had this twitchy, wired energy, like they'd just taken something and were riding the edge. The guy with the gun motioned to me with a nod. Inside now. I was too frozen to say anything. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the pizzas. They yanked the boxes from me and pulled me inside. The door slammed behind me so fast I jumped. They didn't waste time. "Wallet," the gunman barked. I pulled it from my back pocket and held it out. He snatched it, flipping through the cash and cards like he was on autopilot. Then he glanced at my driver's license. He smiled. A slow, nasty kind of smile. "You live on Sycamore Street, huh?" "Right near the middle school." I felt my stomach churn. "Phone," he said next. I handed it over without a word. It was an old Samsung flip phone, nothing fancy. One of the others grabbed my wrist and yanked off my watch. I could feel the sting where his nails dug into my skin. Then came the worst part. The gunman leaned in close, his breath hot and sour. "If you tell anyone about this, if you even think about it, we'll come find you. You, your mom, your dad, that little dog in the backyard. All of you. Understand?" I nodded like my neck wasn't mine. He shoved me hard in the chest. I stumbled backward and tripped over the front step, hitting the ground hard. I scraped my palms and knees on the rough cement. The door slammed shut. I was alone again. Just me, the cold night, and the sound of my own breathing, fast, shaky, and loud. I didn't go back to Tony's. I couldn't. I drove home, white-knuckled the whole way, checking the rearview mirror every 5 seconds like they were behind me. When I walked in the door, my mom knew something was off. She looked up from the couch and said, "Why are you limping?" My dad noticed the blood on my jeans. "What happened?" At first I couldn't even talk. I sat on the edge of the couch shaking. When I finally told them everything, my mom gasped and started crying. My dad got up without a word, grabbed his phone and made a call. My dad used to work with the sheriff's office before he retired. Still had friends there. He called his old partner, told him the whole thing and gave him the address. By 2 a.m. there were 5 patrol cars surrounding that house on Greystone Lane. 2 of the men were still inside. One tried to run out the back door but got tackled by a K9 unit. The third guy, the one who held the gun, was gone. They never found him. The 2 they caught had long records: burglary, assault, drugs. One of them, real name was Marcus Cruz, already had 4 strikes. He got life. The other guy got 5 years. But the third man, the one who knew my address, who looked me in the eye and made that threat, gone. It's been years since that night. I moved out of Maple Hollow after high school and haven't looked back. But sometimes I still wake up in the middle of the night because I swear I heard footsteps outside my window, or the creak of the gate swinging open. I keep a baseball bat under my bed. My dog barks at shadows more than he used to. And every now and then I wonder if Marcus told that third man where I lived. If he ever wrote it down. If he ever remembered. I never deliver food anymore.